Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Continuous Improvement Movement Unplugged.
Today's discussion is going to be on getting started with your lean journey.
So, Tom, what is the roadmap for a company that wants to be successful at continuous improvement?
Good question. I wish more people would ask that question. There's a couple of things that need to happen before you really can have an effective lean transformation or a continuous improvement journey. One of the things that has got to happen is you have to have processes and process standards to get started with. You have to start with that. In other words, if we can't really improve a process if it doesn't have a process that exists. Now, when I say process standards, I don't just mean standard operating procedures and training. That's part of it, but it's not all that's required in order to have a good starting point or a good foundation for continuous improvement. Another thing when you're dealing with standards that's important, other than standard operating procedures and training, is to have a visual workplace that can help supervisors and managers be able to see and detect whether or not the process standards are being met by the people that are doing the work. That tells that the process is being exercised correctly. But there also needs to be standards as far as output standards, as far as maybe safety, quality, delivery, and cost. What is the expectation as far as the output performance? Those things also have to be visually represented in a way where supervisors and managers can easily see whether the process is being exercised correctly and if it's performing correctly. So now that we've got standards, the next thing is we have to make sure that everybody that's involved with continuous improvement, that they're focusing their continuous improvement efforts on things that align with the strategy, the business objectives, the strategic objectives of the company. So that's the second thing. It can be done in parallel. In other words, you can be establishing processes and process standards while creating a strategic set of objectives. We can do those things in parallel. We can start building the strategic vision and plans while creating the process standards. But both of those two things are the beginning. Now that we have strategy, now what we want to do is we want to make sure that everybody in the company is aligned with that strategy. That's all part of strategy deployment and development. So if we've got a good strategy developed and deployed, then as far as the strategy goes, there's going to be things that we need to do in our processes in order to get those processes to perform to the level that will help us meet those strategies or those objectives. So now, how do we get continuous improvement? How do we actually start improving those processes that we've got to the point where they're meeting the objectives? Well, it starts with low-hanging fruit. It starts with processes that if improved, they move the needle the most. If you've only got a finite number of resources and you've got infinite number of opportunities or ways to be able to, to make improvements towards the alignments, we want to start with the things that take the least amount of effort and have the most amount of reward. So in that case, we wouldn't start with the more complex problems to solve. Would start with the ones that are yield us the biggest gains. It's going to take the least amount of effort, and therefore, when you're getting the folks geared up or trained to be equipped to be able to solve those problems, it's very entry level. It's very easy on the pocketbook. It's very easy on the clock. It's things that we can equip people to do very rapidly. Now, once we start getting the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, or the easier problems resolved, then we start to have to go towards some of the more complex issues in order to be able to meet our strategic objectives. A smaller number of people typically would need some additional skills, some additional training to be able to solve those more complex issues. Basically, what I'm saying is if we have processes and if we have alignment, then we have to progressively equip our people to be able to solve the challenges that they're going to be faced with, starting with the easiest to the hardest.
Okay. Tom, how does somebody in a company that hasn't started this journey in the best way assess where they are?
If I have a common cold, I probably don't need a specialist surgeon to be able to help me get rid of this common cold. If I've got something that's really like an advanced third or fourth stage cancer, I'm going to need somebody that's a very, very highly skilled specialist in that field. And when I look at basic lean principles, I look at 5S, Toyota Kata, Kaizen, looking at these different methodologies and then Lean Six Sigma, using the DMAIC methodology, A lot of times what I see companies doing is they're going right to trying to equip people to be doctors. And they may not even use the skills that they've acquired that take a long time and a lot of money and a lot of effort to obtain. They may not even use some of those skills because they're still going to be solving the common cold type of problems. They're going to be looking at the low-hanging fruit. They're going to be solving the less complicated issues. And by the time they get higher up into the complexity tree where they're solving more complex issues, they may forget 80% of what they learned. So for me, where do I start? First of all, if whatever company I'm in, if that company does not have good standards where it's easy to supervise and manage because you can manage by exception by looking to see if the people are following the process standards and meeting the output standards. If you don't have that, I'd start out with 5S. It's a good foundational methodology that helps get standards created and gets the culture accustomed to producing and processing to a standard. That's where I'd start. And now, let's say that that's not the case. Let's say you've got good standards, but you want to rally your culture or rally your team in a common direction to help the company meet its strategic objectives. I would say a good place to start there if you don't have that kind of alignment. If you have either not built a plan with strategic objectives or you have a difficult time deploying that strategy, I would say Hoshin Connery is a good place to start. That methodology, if you have standards, now it's time to start deploying continuous improvement by deploying your strategy or deploying your vision as far as where we need to go, where we need to improve. So I would say Hoshin Connery would be maybe the next methodology would be really helpful to get everybody rowing in the same direction. Now, let's say that you're in a company that you have standards and you have strategy and you've deployed it well. The next thing I would say would be really most effective if you have the strategy deployed, but you don't have good engagement with the employees and supervisors and management as far as continually improving. Let's say that's something that's been difficult in your company. I'd say Toyota Kata is a really good place to start. It's an entry-level dialogue between management and the workers to where it develops this critical thinking or the scientific thinking mindset so that everybody in the company becomes a low level or some type of a problem solver. And it gives them the ability to be able to start getting comfortable with and communicating with management. It also gives management the structure to be able to have dialogue with the workforce where it's not uncomfortable. It's something that builds teamwork and builds a culture. So if you're trying to build a culture of continuous improvement, Toyota Kata is the place to start. So again, if you don't have process standards, I'd start there. If you don't have good strategy or deployment of your strategy, I'd start with Hoshin Connery. Probably the best place to start with continuous improvement is Toyota Kata. In cases where you might need small cross-functional teams, and it might be something that is going to take a little bit more rigor than a Toyota Kata, I would go through Kaizen training. And what Kaizen training, how that's going to benefit you is anytime you might need different skill sets, a cross-functional team to get together for a shorter period of time to be able to resolve issues maybe in 3 to 5 days, Kaizen's a good way to go. Sometimes even with a Kaizen, even with, let's say, 4 or 5 people on your team and dedicated for 3 or 5 days, sometimes even those kind of that kind of skill set with that kind of a focus, it still is going to fall short. Sometimes we're going to have complex business issues that they just aren't going to get resolved in 3 to 5 days. It's going to take more analytical power. It's going to take more scientific thinking. Sometimes, let's say in a lean project, sometimes there's going to be processes that scope a large geographical area as an example. It's going to be hard to get a 3 to 5 day Kaizen event to be able to resolve some of these systemic issues that are flow related. And when it comes to Six Sigma or a quality related business problem, it's going to be difficult in 3 or 5 days to be able to scientifically and objectively identify what true root cause is and what the best corrective action is. So let me summarize what I just said. Anybody that doesn't have standards, I would absolutely start there. If you've got standards, the next thing I'd do is I'd make sure that everybody in the company understands how they align with the business strategic objectives, because we all have to be rowing in the same direction. So when we look at the gaps between where we are and where we're trying to get to as far as the strategic objectives goes, then it's a matter of, in the process areas that I work in, my little circle of influence, what can I do in my processes? What needs to be improved in my processes in order to help contribute toward those strategic objectives? That's Hoshin Connery. Toyota Kata is a really, really, really good entry-level methodology to teach scientific thinking and to resolve lower hanging fruit. Kaizen to be the next progression up for more of a, and let's say, medium level complexity. And then Six Sigma, that would be more complex. So I wouldn't send people right to, let's say, green or black belt training. I wouldn't do it. I mean, unless I work at a very high tech company, yeah, you're probably not going to get the benefits you're looking for. I would start out with 5S, Hoshin Connery, then Toyota Kata, then Kaizen. And if any problems that don't get solved at the Kaizen level, and you need a few people to be able to be equipped to be able to solve those more complex, those bigger problems, then that's where we can go to teaching them the more sophisticated, using statistical analysis and so on.
If somebody was on a journey and they wanted to have the most significant transformative success, where would you recommend they go from there?
Well, you know, first of all, I got to say, everything that we set up to this point should be heard. If you can re-loop this video and listen and listen and listen, you'll find out where you are. And the best way for you to get from where you are to the next place is to take that advice serious. Now, how do you do that? Let's say you needed 5S training. Let's say you needed Hoshin Connery training, or you needed Toyota Kata or Kaizen or Lean Six Sigma training. Any type of training you need for continuous improvement, the best thing you can do is go to mygemba.com/go. If you go to mygemba.com/go, mygemba.com/go, what you'll see there is you'll see all this training for free. There's and it's in the right order. There's Lean Basics, there's 5S, there's Hoshin Connery, there's Toyota Kata, there's Kaizen, there's Lean Six Sigma. It's all right there. You go in 24/7 and get yourself some training. Also, what I'd recommend, in order to be able to get the most out of your career, get the most progression for your company, is to connect yourself with people that have been successful. Yeah, I mean, you know, if I want to play basketball as an example, I want to practice with some people that really are good at basketball. As far as, you know, being able to be to get the most out of myself as a professional, as well as getting the most for my company as a professional, I want to be engaging with and networking with and communicating with and learning from people that have already been where I'm going to. And again, go to mygemba.com/go, and what you'll find there is a place to do some real good, effective networking. And Victor, you and I are there most of the time. So that's what I would recommend.
Well, thank you, Tom, for that really amazing knowledge. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Victor.